Hey, everybody. You are watching the Shit Talking Podcast. I'm Christina.
And I am Robin. And we're ready to talk some shit. What are we talking about today?
Well, today is the topic of forgiveness. And forgiveness, kind of want to talk. I feel like you and I always have to define things. Like, I guess it might be the lawyers in us, is, what any kind of statute or code always has definitions, right? So that we're all using the same. I can't hear you, Robin. I see your lips moving, but I can't
No,
hear.
no, I was just telling my boyfriend who just walked in that I'm podcasting. So I was telling him to
Were
be
you
quiet.
actually like just moving your lips?
Yes, I was. I was like, no, I'm on a
That
podcast.
is so funny. Oh my God.
Well,
That's funny.
so my question to you is, did you actually look up the definition?
Of course not. You're the research person.
Oh, come on. Well, you know what? You had me already do enough research, but I had to watch a film, guys. I was told I needed to watch a film before I got onto this podcast today.
It was a suggestion, not a requirement.
It felt requiry. It felt requiry.
So let me read what I just pulled up really quickly on the internet.
Okay.
On the Google.
On the Google.
So psychologists generally define forgiveness as a conscious, deliberate decision to release feelings of resentment or vengeance toward a person or group who has harmed you, regardless of whether they actually deserve your forgiveness. Also, forgiveness does not mean forgetting, nor does it mean condoning or excusing offenses.
So in your mind, then, what is really even the point of it?
What's the point of forgiveness?
Yeah.
Well, I always hear that expression that forgiveness is for you, not for them.
Right.
Right? Because if you are harboring resentment about something, that resentment really only affects you. It doesn't necessarily affect the person or whoever it's directed at.
But if that's accurate, though, why is it that people beg for forgiveness? Why do they care? If it's really about the person forgiving, right? So if it's about the person that's doing the forgiving and it's really about them and what they think and what they feel, then why do people care if you forgive them or not? Like, why do people come to you and say, I need for you to forgive me? I'm looking for your forgiveness. If it really doesn't have an impact on the person being forgiven.
Well, I guess in that setting it does, right? If the person's asking for the forgiveness, I guess it's because they want to be in your good graces again. They want to, and assuming, of course, that they're genuinely sorry for whatever they did, that you have forgiven them, that it's all good now, that you still love them, you still accept them. I don't know. That's kind of how I think. I mean, I guess I should think about times where I may have wanted forgiveness for something. Maybe I said something that hurt somebody's feelings.
Okay.
I would just want to know that I guess it's more for me, right? Is that
Right.
I want to know that you're not angry with me, that I still have your love and affection, that our relationship is untarnished. That's, I think, how I would feel if I was asking for someone's forgiveness.
Right. Well, tell us about a time where you did ask. Like, when was that really important to you?
I'm not sure I ever have. No, just kidding. I don't know. I mean, I think for me, it's usually just times that maybe I was a little coarse and hurt someone's feelings. Maybe I snapped at them because I was in a bad mood and upset them. Those are occasions that I have asked for forgiveness. I can't think of anything like really hugely major. There was an occasion not all that long ago that I did apologize to somebody for something, and she did not accept my apology, and we don't speak anymore because of it. And
but do you think that impacts you on some level? Because like we were just talking about, when we think about forgiveness, it's about kind of unburdening ourselves from that anger. And she didn't want to unburden herself from that anger. She just wanted to be pissed at you.
She did. Yeah.
So if we're looking at it from the perspective of that forgiveness really benefits the person that's doing the forgiving, then in some way you can kind of look at it as like, well, it's her loss that she chose not to forgive you, especially if you were truly sorry, if you were truly remorseful. Flip just put in the chat, somebody only asks for forgiveness if they're truly remorseful of their actions towards you. So, if you are really remorseful and you ask for that forgiveness, right, then if she chose not to forgive you, isn't that kind of on her? Isn't that kind of her loss that she's choosing to walk around with this hatred of Christina? And I don't know who you are, but you should forgive Christina. You shouldn't hate her.
Well, she's probably not watching, but I think it's kind of twofold. It could be for her, right? If she no longer wants to harbor that resentment, because it's kind of exhausting.
Right.
But then at the same time, it would also be for me too, so that I could feel like not, less guilty, or, feel like whatever I said that I made good on it. What I said
Right.
to her that upset her so much, I sort of made good on. You know what I mean?
So when I think about forgiveness, it's very funny. I think that one thing I wish that was different about me is I feel that I forgive too easily. So I think that there are times where people don't really deserve my forgiveness, but I give it to them anyway. And I think that maybe that for me maybe it's just like emotional laziness. Maybe I don't like the feeling of being angry with someone. I don't like that feeling. Like, I don't like sitting around being pissed off, being upset. That doesn't really do anything for me. So for me, it's just a little bit easier to kind of go like, all right, like, I'm just going to let it go. It's no big deal.
I think it depends what they did, because even though you may forgive them, you're not going to forget it. Like, I think that was mentioned in the definition that I just gave. And I do think that it can change a relationship. So while I may forgive you for what you did, moving forward, I sort of know who you are. Right? Like,
right.
if you did something really awful, it's hard to think of an example. Like, I don't know. If you lied to me about something or did something behind my back,
right.
I might forgive you, but I'm not going to forget that you did that. And I'm going to remember it in the future.
Yeah, but I don't think that forgiveness requires forgetting. I don't think that it has to require, and I actually think it's kind of stupid if you do forget. If you just, say to somebody, you know what, all is forgiven and we're going to act like this never happened. Maybe we are going to act like it's never happened, but in the back of my mind, I should still know that behavior occurred, because especially if that behavior reoccurs, I now know that, were you really truly remorseful then? Were you actually sorry for what you did? Was my forgiveness actually deserved? Because you're now doing the same thing again. Like, you think about, probably the one example that would come up most easily, somebody cheating, right? Like, you're in a relationship with somebody cheats, the other person finds out, they go, oh my God, please forgive me. I love you so much. I'll never do this again. But if they continue to cheat on you, then it behooves you to not forget what that behavior was. Because you can't just forgive and move on as if each incident is isolated when it's not. It's not isolated anymore. It's repeated behavior. And obviously the remorse really isn't there, that it's just lip service. These are just words. The person asking for forgiveness is not really remorseful for what they've done.
Yeah. And, I think too, that sort of goes back to what I was saying, is that, like, the example you gave of cheating. God, that's a hard one. I mean, I've always felt that if I had a partner that cheated on me, I don't think that that's something I could get past. Like, I just feel like that really reveals something about your character.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't feel like I could continue on in that relationship, because I would just never be able to trust you again. But, I think those are situations that can be complicated. Sometimes people cheat because there was something really defective in the relationship, and, it's not to blame the other spouse, right? The non-cheating spouse or the non-cheating partner. But I do feel like in some ways, often, not always, something contributed to that dynamic. So I kind of feel like you have to evaluate that. Like, I'll give an example that might piss some people off. If you haven't had sex and like that's the big thing, right? It's like I always hear, well, my wife or my husband wasn't having sex with me. Well, I could like, not that they have permission or a license to go and like, well, my wife didn't have sex with me, I guess I gotta go cheat. It's like, well, okay, for how long? You know, did you try to resolve that with her or him? Like, you can almost kind of understand how it happens. I mean, it's like it creates this breeding ground for cheating. And I am not in any way excusing it, or suggesting that it's okay to cheat if your spouse isn't having sex with you for a certain period of time. It's not. But, all the decisions we make and the things we do or don't do, they have consequences.
Well, I also think that, not to get onto a cheating tangent, but you know what? Here we are, guys. Yeah. Here we are. I do think in that particular circumstance, though, that you do kind of need a dose of reality in life, right? Like, if you're in a relationship or you're married to someone and you are not having sex with your spouse, what do you think is going to happen? Like, what's your expectation? You know what I mean? Like, and I'm with you that I'm not condoning it or saying that it's the right thing to do, but what do you think is going to come of that? If you're not fulfilling certain parts of your marital relationship, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, I do think people have to appreciate that there are consequences and you're changing the dynamic of the relationship. Actually, I think I might have just subconsciously gotten that from Flip because he said that depending on the violation, it usually alters the nature of the relationship on some level. And I totally agree with that. So even though you might forgive somebody, it can still change the dynamic. It can still change the nature of the relationship. And as far as cheating, I think how we got into that whole part of the conversation was, I just don't think that I could forgive that, because that's what we wanted to talk about today too, is, are there things that just are not forgivable?
Well, one of the things that I think is very interesting, and I'd be interested to hear your feedback about this too, being a divorce attorney, I think that most people go into a relationship thinking that cheating would be unforgivable, and usually it's forgivable. I think most of the relationships or I would say broken relationships, for lack of a better word, that come into our office, I don't find that cheating is the big catalyst. I don't get that a lot. I mean, sometimes that's a symptom.
Yeah.
But, if somebody comes in and they say, our marriage is irretrievably broken, and if I say, why is that? Which typically I don't, because here's a newsflash. Most of the time, your divorce lawyer doesn't really care why your marriage is over. I mean, it doesn't really matter.
And it doesn't matter. Yeah.
But, so it's not like a question I usually ask, like, oh, well, why is the marriage over? But most of the time, people want to tell you that. They want to explain their entire circumstance. And it is important to know where the mindset is of your client. But I would say for the most part, cheating is one of those things that everybody thinks they won't forgive, and they do. And a lot of times when the cheating happens, it's not the first time. It's not like I found out my spouse was cheating and now here I am sitting in your chair. It's I found out my spouse cheated once and then I forgave him or her. Then I found out my spouse cheated again and then I forgave him or her. Then I found out my spouse cheated again and again and again, and now I'm here. So usually there were a couple of patterns of forgiveness before it's like, this is no longer forgivable.
Well, I mean, I think even those situations are complex, because I bet that a lot of those situations, I'm generalizing that it was the husband that cheated, but we know that that's not always the case. But
well, it's the husband that gets caught. Right? Yeah. Wives are just better at it.
Well, yeah, they're better at it. But, just using that as a sort of a hypothetical situation, a lot of times, if the wife is financially dependent on the husband, I think a lot of other things come into play when they're contemplating, well, I'm really pissed off that he cheated on me and I really want to leave him. But then you get into the whole divorce analysis, which isn't easy. is,
Right.
okay, well, what does that look like? And that's such a huge change, and people really have a problem with change. And what am I going to do now? And how am I going to afford a divorce? It's expensive. And where am I going to live? And what about our kids? And am I going to get alimony? And how am I going to support myself? And you go down this rabbit hole that I think sometimes people just think to themselves, well, I guess it's just easier to suck it up and stay.
Right.
And then they cheat again and again and again. And everybody has their breaking point where it's like, okay, well, I'm not doing this anymore. We're done with this.
So cheating is one of those unforgivables for you.
Well,
and let me ask you,
it's never happened to me that I know of.
Oh.
So, I just don't think so. I really, I know myself, and I know that I could never really trust somebody again if he cheated on me.
So even if that person loses your trust, though, that doesn't mean that they can't necessarily gain your forgiveness. I mean, you could still forgive them and perhaps just not be with them.
Maybe I could forgive them, but I wouldn't want to be in a relationship with them, because if you can't trust them, what kind of relationship is that? Like,
So
I
what
am
other
not
things
going
are
to be.
not forgivable? Because
I'm not going to be that woman that is following you around and checking in to see what you're doing during the day, and bothering myself with keeping track of what you're doing to see if you're cheating on me, or to see if there's any opportunity for you to cheat on me. I'm not doing it. Just not doing it. That's
right,
not how I roll.
But what I'm hearing is that the cheating is a deal breaker for the relationship. But my question is it a deal breaker for forgiveness? Like, could you within yourself say, you know what, I'm forgiving this person who cheated on me. I don't want to be with you anymore. I don't want to be in a relationship with you, but I'm releasing that anger. Like, I'm releasing, those I guess bad thoughts, and I'm forgiving you for what you did. I'm forgiving you for cheating. I am maybe even forgiving you for doing something that resulted in the demise of our relationship. I'm forgiving all that. I'm releasing you of that. But that doesn't mean I have to be with you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could. I mean, they're not they're not intertwined to that degree.
Right.
So, yeah, hypothetically, could I forgive them but still decide that I don't want to be in a relationship with them? Yeah.
So you heard it here first. Christina can forgive cheating. What can't you forgive?
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. We're having a hypothetical conversation.
I'm putting some spin on it. I didn't say that you would stay in the relationship, but you could possibly forgive the behavior. So my question is, what behavior could you not forgive? Like, what is it? Like, let's put relationships aside, but what is something that, or maybe not aside, but what is something that you can think of where you say, look, if someone does this, I couldn't forgive them. Like, couldn't happen.
I guess maybe I'm having a hard time with that, because forgiveness is, the definition we read is that you are just releasing the resentment. So I guess in that respect, if that's what we're talking about, you're releasing the resentment. I think that there are things that I think it just takes time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that you just make a decision that you're going to forgive. Is it something that just happens naturally? I don't really know the answer to that.
I think that you do make it. I think it's a conscious decision. I do think it's a conscious decision. And it's very funny. I think that we should have a whole cheating episode, because Flip just said something interesting about cheating, that women are much more forgiving than men are. And I actually agree. I think that men, like, if you cheat on a man, it is like the end of the world. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe this woman cheated on me. Whereas I think the other way around, women tend to be a little bit more forgiving. But I think that's a different episode. We should have a whole cheating episode.
Yeah, we should have a conversation about that. But I think we need to bring up the documentary that I made.
Yes, that you made me watch.
Yes.
Christina, I want you all to know, Christina sent me a very threatening text message.
No, I
It
didn't.
actually really wasn't. She was like, hey, I think you should watch this. But in my mind, I felt very intimidated. And I want you to know that I, very selflessly took it upon myself to sit on my couch with animal crackers and watch this documentary.
Oh, you should have taken a picture of that. I would have liked to see that.
I love animal crackers. But anyway, tell us about this documentary that you forced me to watch.
Okay.
And then I will tell you what I thought.
So this documentary is called Little White Lie. I believe it's on Netflix.
I could only find it on Amazon Prime.
Oh, maybe it was on Amazon Prime. Okay. And so it's about this girl that grows up in this white Jewish family. And grows up believing that she's also a white Jewish girl. And as she grows, it's becoming apparent that she doesn't really look like the rest of her family. She's got like black features but she's very light skinned. So you could like conceivably, if somebody told you that she was white, like you might sort of be like, what? Okay. But you would believe it, I guess, because that's what they're telling you. But then there might be part of you like, but she doesn't look like a white Jewish girl. Like, what's going on there? So as she ages, she's starting to realize more and more, I don't look like my family. Like something's up here. And so long story short, I hope I'm not ruining the whole documentary, but she finds out that her mother had an affair with a black man and she got pregnant, and that is her father. That's her biological father. So she's mixed race, and the mother never tells anybody. She never tells her husband. She never tells the daughter. So it's not until she's in college that she discovers that she's biracial. And it's also not, well, I think the dad found out when she was like 16. So to me, my reaction to that woman was, wow, how could you do that? Like, that is just wrong on so many levels. Like, there's so many things that were just wrong. Like, to lie to your husband, to carry on the charade and deprive the daughter of not knowing her biological father. And she really struggles with her identity.
So here's where I'm going to jump in. I don't think you're ruining the documentary by telling what you told. And the reason I say this is because upon the first scene of this documentary, as soon as we saw the girl, I was like, oh, this is a black girl. I don't understand. like I literally, from scene number one, and granted, black comes in all different ways, right? All different features, all different sayings. I'm not saying that there was a look of black, but what I will say is this. When I sat down with my animal crackers, I was like, that's a black girl. Like, there was nothing about her and the way that or anything about her that was surprising to me. So when I was on Tiger Cracker number 13, and they were like, "Oh my God, she's black," I was like, "You don't say." Like,
no, people,
black.
I know how this ends.
Right. So what was more intriguing to me was not so much the revelation of it, but what was intriguing was the fact that all of these people were so comfortable lying to themselves, including her. Like, I say, you can look in a mirror and say, you know what, Mom? You can tell me whatever I want, and there was some Italian guy in the line, or there was like someone who looked Moorish in your back. Whatever the fuck you want to tell me, I'm black. So why don't we just come clean about who you were sleeping with? For the father, it's the same thing. The dad knew. You can't tell me he was walking around with this little black child and he didn't know the baby wasn't his. To me, the issue is not so much the lies of there was this affair, my father is not really my father, because this happens all the time. The issue was how, to me, this messed up her racial identity. Because it was more of an issue of race, of like, you know, you have black blood in you and you don't know that. And I'm trying to tell you that you're something that you're not. To me, that's a little bit different than I had an affair and chose not to tell my husband. Because I'm sure that there are a lot of people that happened with. And I'm sure that if she had an affair and chose not to tell her husband with another Jewish man, this wouldn't even be a documentary. Because nobody would know, nobody would care, you know, whatever. She looks like everybody else. I just thought it was a lot of people sticking their head in the sand of like, we all knew what this, what you can't.
What are they going to say? I mean, what are they going to say? It's not their place to go up to her and go, come on, we all know that you must have cheated on him. Stop lying to everybody. I mean, what are you going to do? No one's going to do that. I mean, I think the husband should have said.
Oh, I think that the mother should have. I think the unforgivable thing is that mom doesn't come clean as soon as she pushes out this little black baby. She should go, well, shit, I'm caught. And maybe it's time to fess up because this is a little black baby. Like, I mean, like the fact that she said, you know what? I'm just not going to say anything, and we're going to tell this girl that she's white. Like, that to me is insane. We're just going to tell her she's white. I mean, and granted, she had light features, and she had, you know, curly hair and all of these things, and we've certainly seen people of Jewish descent with coarser hair or with, you know, a stronger curl pattern and all of those things. But what I will say is, once again, from scene number one, I was like, this little girl's black. That's the first thing I saw.
As she got older, I think it was more apparent. And it's hard to tell, you know, we're not seeing her in person. I mean, definitely now you would certainly recognize her as black. But from her baby pictures and stuff, from what you were seeing on the screen, I don't know. It might have been hard to tell. I'm not lying, Bettina. I have no reason to lie.
No, but, I mean,
because I've seen Hispanic girls that sometimes look like they could be black or mixed race. I've actually seen some Greek girls that look like they could be maybe Hispanic or mixed race. So I feel like with her, it was like, okay, but there's something going on in her DNA that's not like totally like white.
Well, it's very funny because when you go through the documentary and they're like talking to family members and friends and all of that, like I think at one point she was sitting down talking to her cousin, and her cousin was kind of like, I mean, we all kind of knew you looked a little different. We just didn't talk about it. Like nobody talked about it. Like I think everyone noticed it, but it was like everyone was so staunchly, you know, ingrained in this, she's white. To me, that's the part that messes it up. Like I said, as soon as this black baby came out, and mom was like, this baby is black. You know what I mean? And granted, I'm not saying this happens on day one, because to me, all babies are very light and weird looking when they first come out. But let's say we're talking about day 10. By day 10, she was probably like, maybe this is, I can't remember the guy's name. I want to call him Rodney, but maybe that was not his name. I don't remember.
I think it was.
Was it Rodney? But like, I feel like at some point she's kind of like, maybe this is Rodney's baby. Like, I feel like there
she had to know.
You know. And that to me is what, you know, when we're talking about forgiveness. And I guess the question becomes, does the daughter forgive her? Does the husband forgive her? Like,
they seemed pretty tight, the daughter and the mom, although that's her mom. I mean, I'm sure she must be angry with her about it. I don't see how she could not be. But
do you think this is unforgivable?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's unforgivable, but if I was that girl and that was my mother, I would have such a problem with such an apparent character defect, because it was so selfish, just so selfish. I mean, to deprive her of potentially knowing her father, because he's dead now, so she can't know him.
Right.
And, you know, I can't imagine having to deal with your racial identity. Like, could you imagine not finding out that you're black until you're a grown-up?
No, I
Like,
couldn't imagine that.
weird.
But I think that it would be different for me if all my life someone told me I was something else. You know what I mean? And then I find out as an adult versus there are a lot of people who maybe just have no idea what they are for whatever reason. Maybe they were given up for adoption. Maybe they were, abandoned as a baby and you don't know the racial background of your parents. I mean, there are people that really just don't know what they are. To me, that's a little bit different than someone affirmatively saying to you something that they know 100% is a lie and then pushing that on you despite the fact that she clearly suffered from various identity crises throughout her childhood, and you just let her rock with it, as opposed to saying, you know what, why don't we sit down and let me just explain to you that you are black, that you are a black woman, that, your father is black, as opposed to letting this girl just spiral. That to me is what's more unforgivable because lies happen. Like I said, if she had an affair with a white man, none of this would even be coming up.
No, she said that. She said that, which to me is even more deplorable because she really had no intention of ever coming clean with anybody. If she could have carried this on forever, she would have. Because she said that nobody would ever even have known if Rodney was white.
Right.
Which is horrible. I thought that was horrible.
But I also think that if Rodney was white, she wouldn't have grown up with this identity crisis throughout her entire childhood of not knowing why she felt so different or, why she didn't fit in a way. You know what I mean? I think that to see your child struggling and that you have the answers, you have the pieces to that puzzle and you choose not to give it, to me is just pretty messed up. You know what I mean? It's like, right, like she could have helped her through that by saying, I see what you're struggling with and I have answers to your questions. All of these things that you're thinking of, why am I different? I can answer that for you. And she chose not to because she really just didn't want to get the heat from it. Like, even when their parents divorced, and I can't remember, I don't know if you recall this in the documentary, but even when her parents divorced, it wasn't like her father said, well, now I'm divorced from your dad, so let me tell you the real story. She still kind of had to pull it out of her.
She did. And so that's why I don't know. I think part of forgiveness though is I can forgive a lot easier when I know that someone is really sorry. And
But do you think the mom was sorry?
I didn't think she was. No. I think that's what I was going to say is I did not get the sense that she really was sorry.
Well, maybe she wasn't sorry because, and granted, we don't, this is something that we saw on screen, right? So we don't know what the background was, what conversations happened behind the scenes that maybe we weren't privy to. But in some way, even though this documentary was being made, I don't know if she ever really held her mother to task. Like, she asked her questions and she said, I want this information and I want to know. But I mean, did she ever say Mom, what you did was really fucked up. Like, you messed me up in a way that you didn't have to. And it's messed up that you did that to me. And that was hurtful to me. And, the fact that you chose to, hide this information throughout my childhood severely impacted me in ways that you don't seem to be taking any accountability for. I don't know if that ever happened because not that she was making light of it. She wasn't making light of it, but I almost felt like through the documentary, she was just hunting for the information. Well, tell me about him. Tell me what happened. How did you meet? When was the first time? When did this affair happen? As opposed to sitting mom down and holding her face and saying, Mom, what you did was messed up. Because there are times we're having these conversations and mom's laughing about it. She's like, yeah, the first time was in 1968. Ha ha ha. And I'm like, stop ha ha ha. You messed me up.
She was. I was getting so angry when I was watching the show at the mother. I maybe she was missing some IQ points. I don't know. I can't explain what was going on there. And you're right about the daughter too. She never really seemed to get angry with her mother. But if that was a confrontation she had, maybe they chose not to air that in the documentary. I hope to God that she said that to her mother, 'cause
Right.
I feel like that's what I would say is how could you be so selfish and lie to all of us? But to me, like, you're accountable to me. You're accountable to the other people that you lied to, but I'm asking you as your daughter, how could you do that to me? How could you do that just because you wanted to save face?
Well, let me ask you this. Dad said that he knew at around 16, when she was around 16. Do you lay any fault to Dad for not telling her? Because Dad was like, it wasn't my business to tell. But to me, I'm like, that's still your daughter, though. And you see that she's going through the struggle. And again, you know, like maybe Dad could have come in and go and said, like, hey, like, I see that you're struggling and I understand why you're struggling because, you know, obviously this isn't an easy subject for me either. This is hurtful for me as well. But here's what's up.
It's a great question, and I would like to know the answer to it, but I feel like this documentary had a lot of unanswered questions, and it had a lot of unasked questions.
Mm-hmm.
So these questions that you're posing are great, totally logical. They were never entertained in the documentary, and I almost feel like it was they kind of soft on the parents. But they very clearly had, like, communication was not their strong point. Because
Well,
if it
no.
was, they probably wouldn't have been in this mess in the first place.
To me, to be honest, when I look at the situation of forgiveness, I don't know if this would be forgivable for me. I think it kind of depends on how much this messed me up. Like, I mean, obviously this girl seems relatively well adjusted at this point, like that she was able to come to terms, she was able to find her identity or how she wanted to identify when she went to college, regardless of what her parents did or did not tell her. And she kind of came into her own in that way. But like, if I were to a point where this really like messed me up, I don't know that I could forgive it because you could have prevented that. And you're my parent. Like, your job as my parent is to protect me, not to protect yourself. You're supposed to put me before you.
Yeah, and the other thing too that really struck me is she said, she asked her mother, why didn't you just leave daddy? And she said, well, you know, I had a really strong sexual connection to Rodney, which kind of implied she didn't with her husband. But your dad, your dad, you know, the man she thought was her dad, was fun and, you know, smart and he had a good job and, you know, the financial connection was there and all of that. So it's almost like, okay, so really the ultimate in selfishness. I'm going to stay with daddy because he's the breadwinner and he's taking care of things and he's fun. You know, I have fun with him and I can have this comfortable life, but I'm going to go bang this other guy on the side. That's basically what her life was.
Right. I mean, we talk about, you know, and this is going on in the chat where Bettina says everything is forgivable, but forgiving doesn't mean we maintain a relationship. And I can see that where like maybe I would or would not forgive. I mean, I don't know if I agree that everything's forgivable. I think some things aren't, but you know, it could very well be that if I were in her situation, that I may say I'm not forgiving my mom, or maybe I am forgiving my mom for what you did, but like maybe now I don't want to necessarily have a relationship with you, Mom. Like maybe our relationship is not the same anymore because of the things that you did. And it's funny because Bettina says that she's forgiven all of her ex-boyfriends. I have not. I'm going to be 100% honest that I absolutely have an ex-boyfriend I have not forgiven to this day. I haven't let it go. And if somebody says like, oh, like, are you still mad at him? Yes, I am. And if I saw him again, I would punch him in the nose.
Don't do that. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm having a hard time with this forgiveness stuff because I'm having a hard time separating forgiveness with, you know, whether you continue to have a relationship with the person.
I think they're two completely different things. Like, I think that you can forgive somebody and not continue a relationship with them. You can forgive because like the definition said, it's letting go of the resentment. It's letting go of that anger from your side to say, you know what? I am now releasing that anger that I feel towards you. I don't feel that anymore. I'm not angry. I'm not resentful. I want you to go live your best life. But you living your best life may not have me in it. That's just what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of an ex in particular, and I wouldn't say that I'm like still broken up about it. I saw his true colors too late, and he's
Mm-hmm.
a major jerk. But I'm certainly not saying like, "Oh, I hope you live your best life." Like I'm not saying that either. It's and you know, this was so long ago that it's just the wound is old. I don't want to say
Yeah.
names, but I don't know, forgive him. Well, there wasn't anything in particular he did. He just was a douche. Like he
No,
just,
I
and I
mean,
think I'm really mad at myself for like, you have people where you look back and you're like, why did I go out with that person? Like, what was that all
yeah,
about?
I mean, I think that for me, the lack of forgiveness was because I felt that his behavior was so intentional and so knowing. It wasn't like negligent behavior. It wasn't like, oh, this like, you know, all these things that happened were a side effect. Like you literally masterminded this whole thing that you knew would crush me and you did it anyway. And it was kind of like, who cares what Robin wants or what Robin needs? It's about what I need. And I felt like I can't forgive that. Like I can't forgive being intentional in bad behavior. And I understand some of the other things we talked about, like cheating and things like that. Like that's all intentional too. So, maybe if that's the case, that would fall into that same category for me. But I don't know. Like, I think even though cheating is still intentional behavior, it's something that might be more forgivable because it's like, okay, it happened. You're sorry about it. Maybe I'm not going to be in a relationship with you. Maybe I don't want you in my life anymore, but I can forgive that you did that there was this indiscretion. But I think that when there's just a pattern of behavior that was so intentional, I just can't forgive him. You know what I mean? So even to this day, like, and granted, he's never asked for forgiveness. I don't know if he would, if he could. Like, I don't know if it would bother him that I don't forgive him. I'd like to hope that it would, but I don't know. But I feel like in that particular instance, I'm just kind of like, no, what you did was so messed up that you don't deserve my forgiveness. So but when we go back to the beginning of the show, is that hurting me or is that hurting him? Is
Yeah.
that hurting me that I'm not letting that go? Or is that hurting him? Now, for me, I don't feel like it's hurting me because it's not like it plagues my daily life. Like, I do not think about this man daily and I'm like,
Yeah.
he'll rue the day. Like, it's not like I wake up with a revenge plan every morning. I don't. I don't really think about it. But I think if somebody were to come back and say to me, hey, like all that, like, do you forgive him? I'd be like, no. Like, I don't.
Yeah,
I don't forgive
I
him.
had people like that too in my past where like, no, I don't forgive you for that. But I'm not thinking about it. It's
Right.
not like I'm getting up every morning and thinking about it. I mean,
But
if I
that's why
was
I feel,
plotting revenge, then I say, yeah, you need to get a grip. Move on.
yeah, no, I think that would feel a little bit different if I felt that it was um like impacting my daily life and I'm constantly thinking about it. But I think it's just more of a thing in passing. Like it's not really something I ever really think about. But if somebody says like, hey, of all of your ex-boyfriends, do you forgive all of them? I'd be like, yeah, no. I don't. I don't. You know what I mean? But there is kind of the thought process of when we think about the fact that forgiveness is really for us and letting all of those things go, that, am I really still kind of giving this person the upper hand because I didn't let it go? Like, am I doing myself a disservice because I really need to say, you know what? I forgive you. I forgive you for whatever happened and whatever you did and whatever role you played and whatever role I played. Like whatever it is, I forgive it and it's released. maybe that's something that I need to do. I'm just not there. Maybe I need to, like, somebody find me a therapist. Can we bring a therapist on this show just to have a session with me and about all of my, like, crazy, you know, thought processes? I don't know. Maybe I need somebody to help me to let that go, but it's just, to me, something I'm kind of like, it's not that important for me to let it go, and I choose not to.
There's so many. Where would we start?
I know, to unpack all of the bags, right? Like, yeah, I don't know. I guess I just choose not to be my best self in that way. And maybe I should work on that.
And I'm perfectly comfortable with it.
I'm perfectly comfortable with not being my best self. So I don't know. I mean, I think ultimately, if it is for you, if forgiveness is for the person, you know, doing the forgiving, then it kind of behooves us to be a bit forgiving, right? Like, it's in our best interest to do it. Yeah. I do have, Jane Ann, it's actually right here, your doc in a box. I have it. Yeah. I said I need a therapist. They're therapy cards.
Ooh.
Yes. So these therapy cards were created by Dr. Cassandra Hutchins. She is a therapist. And literally, she just puts, like, different scenarios on a card that you can look up. Like, it's a guide. Like, there are cards about career, life purpose, depression, anxiety, anger. They're actually cards about forgiveness. Perhaps I should have looked at those before this show. Love and relationships and general well-being. And you can just, like, look things up and say, like, hey, I'm going to look up a card about anxiety, or I'm going to look up a card about depression, or, you know, whatever it is. And it will tell you different things on that topic that may help you to think through or to work through certain things. So it's like a therapist in a box.
I don't know. I feel like you just get to some point in life and you're like, screw therapy.
I don't think we can ever say screw therapy. I think it's so needed. I feel like everybody should engage in some sort of therapy. I'm not saying you have to do it every week or every 2 weeks or every month or whatever. It doesn't have to be constant, but I do think that we can all benefit from having an unbiased third party come in and go, here's what's wrong with you. Not that a therapist would ever say that, but maybe here's how you process those issues. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that girl is in therapy. Lacey, I think her name is.
Oh, yeah.
She's in therapy. Yeah. She actually, I just can't imagine trying to figure out your race when you've been told your whole life that you're white. I just can't imagine what that's like.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but I think in this particular issue, or this documentary for me, the lack of forgiveness to me comes from the racial identity issues more so than the you lied to me about my father issues. And that's just how I felt about it when I was watching it, because I was like, I'm sure there are many people out there that think their father's one person and they're probably not. Like, it happens. But the fact that you saw this poor girl struggle through that identity crisis and you chose not to do anything, I mean, it's a little messed up. That's all I'm saying. It's a little messed up.
Yeah, I think so. I agree with you.
So I think we solved all of the world's problems as usual, or at least mine, which are, I need to start forgiving people. I need to let go of maybe some underlying resentments that I'm holding on to. I mean, I started the show saying that I think I forgive too easily. So it's kind of interesting to me that there's literally like one person in the scheme of the world that I can't seem to forgive. So maybe I should work on that.
Well, I think for me, when I have a hard time forgiving somebody, I think part of that is because I am angry with myself for whatever decision I made to be with that person. Like, I guess in the example of the boyfriend, it's like I sort of am like, why was I with that guy? Well,
yeah, there is a level of self-examination where you're kind of like, why did I even put myself in that situation? But I don't think that means that relieves him of the fact that he was a douche. Like, he's still a douche, and he still has to own that.
Yeah. No, I don't forgive you for being a douche. Maybe actually something we didn't talk about, which I think we should save for another day, is maybe self-forgiveness, right?
Ooh, that's a big one.
For making mistakes and whatever. We're humans. We're horribly flawed.
or wonderfully flawed. I don't know.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You can look
However
at it
you
that
want
way
to look
too.
at it.
All right, kids.
Well,
Well, I hope you enjoyed our discussion. If you have not seen Little White Lie, I highly recommend that you watch it on Amazon Prime. It was
yeah, no,
good.
it was a good time. Thank you for forcing me to watch it, Christina.
You're welcome.
I thought it was quite interesting. And thank you all from all of our peanut gallery for joining us on the Shit Talking podcast. And if you have not gone to wherever you listen to your podcast, whether it's Spotify or Apple or wherever you go, and download and subscribe, you should probably go do that. I'm not going to forgive you if you don't.
Yeah, do it right now. Right now.
Immediately.
Like now. Right now. Thank you, guys. We'll see you next week, Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we hope to see you again. Toodles.